Hey guys, this is Phil, and today we're going to talk about some extremely basic SEO for your site, and more specifically, we want to talk about the tools that IO provides for you to do some SEO optimization for your category and your product pages. So we have our demo site here. Now the first thing we want to talk about is kind of the very, very basic stuff that needs to be addressed on any site when you're talking about SEO. The biggest things that you really want to start off with is just looking at your overall site health and your site speed. I'm not going to get too deeply into those. I can cover those in more depth in later videos. And of course, there's a lot you can learn out there by just Googling the subject. But really, those are some of the biggest things that you need to start off with. And then once you kind of have that stuff, and you have your visual design where you want it, the next thing from there is just some small technical stuff we want to look at in the site. And the first is what's called permalinks. And you can access this by going to Settings, Permalinks, once you're logged into your admin dashboard here in WordPress. Now, if you have an IO website, this is going to have been done for you, but it still doesn't hurt to check. Sometimes things can get changed. Sometimes maybe you've changed it yourself and not realized it. But point being is it really needs to be set to post name or a custom structure. And what this does is it's actually changed the way that URLs appear when you're on your website. So it actually is what gives it this nice human readable format as opposed to kind of the gibberish that you get on a default WordPress setup. So again, permalinks. Now the next thing to know about is the SEO plugin that is in use on an IO website. And on your site, you can find it by going to your installed plugins, and it is called Yoast SEO. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. If for any reason it's not installed, maybe on an older IO site, you can get it by going to Add New and finding it in the repository of WordPress and getting it downloaded to your site. And once you're in there, it does some really cool stuff. And then one of the biggest things that you want to make sure that you do once you do have this installed or on your site, and again, this will probably have been done for you on an IO site, but it is worth checking, is something called breadcrumbs. And you can see those in action here. And these are fairly important for SEO. It helps Google to index your site, and it also helps it to kind of understand where everything is linked to on your site. So very important to have. And then finally, something else that Yoast will provide us is something called sitemaps. And again, that's a fairly, not advanced subject, but something kind of out of the scope today that we'll get into later. But something that's a concept worth researching on your own. And again, if you have a recent IO site, this is something that we've probably done for you. But again, it's worth checking. And if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us. But now let's get into actual on-page SEO, basic SEO for category and product pages. Now right here is a category page, and we can see it here. I've already added some content to it so we can kind of get an idea of what's going on. Now, the biggest things to be aware of on a category page is when it first comes to you as a default IO site, especially if you have one of our essential sites, a do-it-yourself site, it's going to just be a blank page that just has IO shortcodes on it. So the biggest things that you're going to need to do to make sure that these pages rank as well as possible is to get some content added to that. So the real key here is to get 200 to 300 words typically of content, of written content on the page, and it needs to be really focused on the keywords that you've picked out for your business. And again, that's a little bit more of an advanced subject, talking about keywords that we will kind of address in a future video. But again, it's something you can research on your own. It's just a matter of looking at your competitors, understanding what they're doing, kind of taking a look at your own business and understanding what search terms that you think are going to best match potential customers with your actual business niche. So from there, you just write that content up. So I'm going to show you how to first add that. So let's just say that this wasn't here. So let me go ahead and copy this content so we can put it back. So when you first come to the page here, it look like this. You find just any plus sign. You want to go ahead and you can add what's called a block. In this case, we're going to add a paragraph. And we've talked about this in other videos, but something to always be aware of is that you cannot add any custom content in between these shortcodes. So be aware of that. Sometimes when you first start a page, it's going to kind of force you to start in between. So we'll go ahead and we will add our content in and let it stay. But once you're done with that, you need to make sure that you do reselect it, and then you're going to see when you hover over it these arrows. Make sure you move it to the very, very top or the very, very bottom below these short codes to make sure that you do not see an error. And once you add that and you update your page, you'll now see that you have this content added to your page. Again, this isn't really 200 or 300 words. I'm just really kind of using this as an example. You'll likely want to have multiple paragraphs, really getting into your business messaging and your branding. And again, you see too that this isn't formatted very well. In later videos and more advanced videos, we will get into how to actually take care of all this and how to format and get into that. But for now, this is just how to add this content. If you do have questions in the meantime about how to work with this a little bit more deeply, you can always reach out. I'd be happy to help. Go back to the page. Now, the next thing to know how to work with is the basic SEO tools from Yoast that we've provided you. And this is a real rabbit hole, but let's just talk about the basics for today and just kind of what these basic fields do. Now, first up is focus key phrase. This is something that you can kind of enter what you might call the phrase that best describes what you're trying to do with this particular portion of your business, with say your moonwalks, your bounces, your combos, your obstacle courses. You could put a term in here, and this will actually help Yoast to analyze the content that you've written for this page and kind of provide recommendations. We're not going to use it today, just because it is a little bit more advanced than what we want to get into. But again, it's worth looking into and kind of researching on your own. What we really want to focus on today is snippet editing. And what this does is this allows us to really refine the way that our search results are going to be seen by Google when it indexes these particular pages. We can look at edit snippet, and what this allows us to do is kind of change the way the title works. We can kind of switch these out or add new things, which allows this part here to be changed. We can change what's called the slug, which is going to change up here. And as you can see right now, it's really it's actually quite good. It's moonwalk, bounce houses, so it kind of hits all the keywords we want. And for category and product pages, you probably do need to be really careful changing this. If you do, just be aware that maybe it could break synchronization. So if you do, keep an eye on it. Otherwise, I try not to touch it too much. But one thing you definitely can do is add descriptions. And this will actually let you to provide some meta information that Google will then use as a description for the search result. I highly recommend kind of adding some content here, and that will really let you start at sending more authoritative content to Google and the other search engines, which is of course going to increase your rank. And of course, once you've done anything, make sure to hit update. Now, the same thing goes for your product pages, except these don't have a lot of multiple shortcodes. These are just going to be contained in one universal shortcode for the product. And again, the same thing goes. You just find plus signs on the page. You can add your content above and below. You can add paragraphs. You can add other content. You can add headings, whatever you like, videos, images, all kinds of stuff that you can do. Something else that's worth mentioning is that we recently on I/O we did build in automatic H1 headers into all your pages, but sometimes you're not always going to like these. Sometimes they're not descriptive or exactly what you'd like them to say. So in a later video, we will of course cover how to get rid of these, how to change them out for your own. But if you need to know in the meantime, as always, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to help. And so that really right there covers most of the very, very, very basics of starting to work with SEO optimization on these pages. In later videos, we're going to get a lot deeper into all this stuff, specific strategies you can take, how to hook up more apps, how to get into analytics on your website. But for now, this is just kind of the basics to get you guys started and thinking about how you guys can really optimize your websites, particularly your essentials websites, to really start ranking and working better. Well, thanks again, everybody. This was Phil, and I'll see you guys again soon. Thanks and have a great day.